Hello, welcome to the Smart Student. My name is Chelsea Seaburn. I'm excited for this video because it's going to be slightly different than my typical tutorial-driven, lesson-driven videos that you're used to, because what I want to do is just talk about the topic of learning. More specifically, I want to give you guys some advice to becoming a better learner. And now here's why. So between my YouTube channel, my Facebook group, my email inbox, a common theme, feedback I receive, if you will, is that a lot of you don't feel like you're good at learning. Now, this comes in a lot of different forms. Maybe you don't feel like you're a good test taker, or you're not good at studying, or you're not good at writing papers. And so what I want to start with is by simply asking you a question. And you can answer this, keep it to yourself, but answer it honestly. Do you feel like you're a smart person? In other words, do you feel like you're good at learning? Do you enjoy learning? Do you like knowledge? Do you like trying and learning new things, particularly difficult things? The reason I'm starting with this question is because when I asked myself this, say at the beginning of my bachelor's, my answer was no, I am not a smart person. Learning is extremely difficult for me. I hate trying new things, having to learn all these new topics in my classes because it's such a struggle. And so I remember what it felt like to be beaten down by this overarching belief that I simply wasn't a smart person. And here's the thing, I have a feeling that at least some of you guys can relate to feeling that way yourself. So how did I go from I'm not a smart person to, all right, I guess I'm smart, I guess I'm good at learning? Well, it starts with this right here, and that is, believe it or not, I don't consider myself a smart person to this day. Rather, I trust that I can figure anything out. Doesn't matter if it's brand new for the first time, if it's something that is difficult to me by nature, or something that comes fairly easy. I know and believe that no matter what it is, I can figure it out. And so what am I alluding to here? Well, it's adopting the mentality of self-learning. In other words, there's internal shifts you absolutely have to make if you currently have a belief that you're not smart, that you're not good at learning. So if your goal is to make learning something that's more natural for you, something that's easier for you, well, your first step is learning to enjoy the process of learning to see this as an asset, an ally, not something you dread, not something you don't want to do. All those new tasks that you run into that seem difficult, learning to look at them in a positive light. And believe it or not, this is an internal shift I had to make myself because I needed to learn how to value knowledge. Because here's the thing, when you value something, when you think it's cool, when you desire it, when you genuinely want it, it naturally becomes easier for you. When you want to do something, that alone makes it easier to do. So that's the internal shift you need to make yourself. Now let's talk about something more actionable and concrete that you can actually practice to become that better learner. And this is actually a method that I use to teach in my Smart Student Writing Academy. You'll notice I use it on my channel after I say it, but learn by asking questions. Because here's the thing, questions are the cornerstone of you finding knowledge. Why? Because the more questions you ask, the more answers you're going to find. The better questions you learn to ask, the better answers you're going to find. So here's a few examples of how I use this myself. First, let's talk about vocabulary. This again is something when I first started college, I felt like my vocabulary was so minimal, it was almost embarrassing how low my vocabulary was, how it almost sounded illiterate at times. And so how I built my vocabulary to where it is today, something that I'm actually pretty proud of and I feel confident with, is that anytime I was reading, if I didn't know a word, I would immediately Google the definition. If it were in my textbook, I would look it up. Still to this day, if I'm reading a book for pleasure or I hear a word in a show I'm watching and if I don't know what it means, I'll look it up. Quite frankly, I'll look up words where I have an idea and I could use it in a sentence, but if I can't define it myself, I will quickly look it up on Google, read the definition, And over time, it's built my vocabulary. It's built my knowledge bank to where I now feel confident and articulate enough to do something like have a YouTube channel. This is a very simple practice that you can implement in your life as well. But now I want to talk about the other half of asking questions. Well, it's finding answers. So tell me this. How many of you can relate to feeling anxiety when you don't know something? When you have a question and you don't know the answer, how many of you get flustered in that moment? You almost feel like there's this block of doom, dread, whatever the case may be, but that's not an enjoyable state for you to be in. For instance, a way that I see this surface pretty commonly among you guys is when you receive instructions from your professor that aren't clear. You're not entirely sure what you're supposed to do. Your professor's not there to clarify that for you. Cue the anxiety, cue the flustered feelings, all of that good stuff. And so this is where finding those answers, building this skill will help you in this sense. And so skill, that's exactly how I like to teach this to students, is that rather than approach each of your questions, each thing you don't know, question by question, don't know by don't know, zoom out and look at this entire situation as the skill of finding answers. And here's the thing, you have the most powerful tool at your disposal, the internet. And yes, I use the internet every day still to find answers to questions I have. And so this is another thing I find pretty common on my YouTube channel, my Facebook group, all of that. And that is that I notice a lot of students don't think to Google questions themselves before they ask it to an audience. So a lot of students have this habit of going directly to another person and asking a basic question rather than Googling it, searching YouTube for it to find that specific answer themselves. And this is very common among people, particularly ones that don't have the skill of self-learning. And so this may seem like such a basic concept, basic idea, but it all boils down to this. To become a better self-learner, you need to learn by asking questions. Because when you learn by asking questions, this is going to teach you how to find answers. And the better you are at that, the more knowledge you're going to gain, the more information you're going to have. Quite frankly, think about research. That's exactly what research is. When you receive a writing prompt and you have a list of objectives to fill, well, you're simply finding those answers, researching those answers. It's the same process, and you can apply it to your daily life, to your job, to college. Doesn't matter. This is why I have that instilled belief that I can figure anything out rather than I'm just a smart person, because that's what smart looks like in action. That is the skill of being a smart person, of becoming a better learner, is figuring things out, aka learning how to learn. But let me know, what do you think about this topic? I do have a few other shifts and practices that I'm going to be discussing on this channel, but in the meantime, just think about it. Think about how you personally feel about learning yourself. And that question I asked at the beginning, do you feel like you're a smart person? Think about that, and then I will see you guys in the next video where we'll discuss some of the other changes I made to get from point A to point B where I'm at now. I'll see you guys later.